this lecture, which is part of our project Learning, I'm glad to welcome our lecturer from the NGO sector, Snežina Gabova. She will present the point of view of the NGO organizations on the challenge-based learning approaches. Her lecture is aimed to assist project partners in the implementation of Project Result 2, adding a non-academic dimension to the topic that is central to our project. Snežina, would you please briefly introduce yourself and your subject?
Thank you, Nico. I'm glad to be here today with you. I worked on the learning project on behalf and with the team of the Research and Training Point Foundation. So today what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is briefly touch upon the question of challenge-based learning, what it is, why it is important. Then briefly also explain how the Learn Inc. project partners worked and implemented the challenge-based learning methodology. And then we'll talk briefly also about non-governmental organizations, civil society, and what is their role in the process of challenge-based learning. I want to say that we're not going to go in depth into the method of challenge-based learning or comparing it with other methods, but we will see how exactly it fits in academic education, why it is important, and what were the results of the learning project.
We introduced the topic of this lecture, the challenge-based approach, and at the level of language it quite sounds very easy to translate. But actually what is the essence of this approach in the realm of the education?
Most generally, we can define challenge-based learning, and this is actually a working definition that was adopted also by the Learn Inc. project, as follows, and here I draw upon resources from the University of Twente. So challenge-based learning, or CBL, is a pedagogical approach that actively engages students in a situation that is real, relevant, and related to their environment. So the core to CBL is that learning is driven by challenging, open-ended problems that have multiple solutions. Challenge-based learning also offers students authentic learning experiences that allow them to explore, discuss, and meaningfully construct concepts and relationships in contexts that involve real-life situations. And I think it's important here to emphasize a couple of the terms, or several of the terms from this definition. So first, engagement, open-ended questions, exploring learning experiences, multiple solutions, and real-life challenges.
You mentioned the word challenges many times. What are the challenges that give reason for the introduction of such method?
Challenge-based learning is not an entirely new or an entirely modern concept. It draws upon different previous ideas and methodologies in education, but the reasons why it has become so important, and the reasons why also the learning partners decided to go with it, are reasons that go very deep. The learning partners, I believe, they recognize that challenge-based learning is well suited to educate young people, but not only, in the context of the current very deep transformations, societal, technological, educational, personal transformations and transitions. And deep transitions, in this case, refer to fundamental changes that drive the current socio-technical systems. And education is called upon to harness those drivers of change for sustainable future scenarios and the reordering of society in the age of digital technology and artificial intelligence. And in this context, of deep transitions and deep transformations, we can say that challenges essentially are problems or issues that transcend a single question, a single research question, or a single subject of study or field of study. Not to mention that recently, say in the past 5 or 10 years, we have been hearing a lot about grand societal challenges. If you look at some documents developed by the European Commission, for example, those grand societal challenges are defined as complex, multi-level, multidimensional problems that require the efforts of multiple actors, public, private, research, civil society as well, to be addressed. And just to name a few of those grand challenges, digital transition, green transition, artificial intelligence, climate change. And so it's the context of those challenges that requires also deep changes and transformations in beliefs, norms, behaviors, so that those deep transitions can take place, both individually and collectively, and also for actions towards a desirable, sustainable future to be possible. And so education that addresses challenges in a meaningful way is the pathway to do it. And when we talk about education, I mean, of course, within the context of the Learning Project, we talk about academia, higher education, but also formal, non-formal, informal education, and lifelong learning is the way to go. And if you allow me, just going back to the question of those grand societal challenges, our viewers might know that the Commission has also developed within the Horizon Europe research program 5 missions to be tackled, to be worked upon by scientists, researchers, the private sector, and achieve some results by 2030. So one is adaptation. There's 5: adaptation to climate change, cancer cure, oceans and waters, restoring oceans and waters, the 100 climate neutral and smart cities, and a soil deal for Europe. So that's the general context against which the project was developed, and the partner universities worked in the course of those past 2 years.
Now we have this list of challenges that are to be tackled by the application of this new, you said not new, but newly rediscovered approach. Can you elaborate further on what challenge-based education means, on the challenge-based approach within the domain of the education, science, learning, academia?
As I mentioned briefly in the beginning, challenge-based learning comes upon several other methods of teaching and learning. So it is essentially a variant of problem-based learning, but there can be many other derivations from this basic concept. And one very useful resource that our viewers can visit and learn more about is, for example, Edutopia. We have project-based learning, we have community-based research, we have inquiry-based learning and teaching. But I think the core definition in challenge-based learning is that it's more like a sandbox, in the sense of both playing, experimenting, testing, a sandbox for solving multidisciplinary challenges in an innovative way and in an entrepreneurial way. And it's heavily based on co-creation and co-implementation, so bringing together different actors. If I can borrow from the authors, actually, from some of the authors who developed the concept of challenge-based learning, Nicholas Cater and Therese, there's a very nice diagram that shows the 3 main pillars or 3 elements of challenge-based learning, which are engage, investigate, and act. What does that mean? So the framework of engage, investigate, and act essentially describes the process of how you can use it in a classroom, but also how the actual discovery and generation of knowledge happens. So engaging is the stage of identifying a challenge, defining the problem. The stage of investigation, of course, is the period where you conduct your research, you gather additional information to address the problem identified previously. And then the stage of acting is the development of solution or solutions, because the elements of or the aspects of challenge-based learning are such that they show that sometimes to such grand challenges, one solution may not be enough. There may be multiple, depending on the context. And here, the learning project, but as well as the concept, they emphasize that those challenges are context-based. So from the time of engagement, investigation, and acting, we're talking about real-life challenges and situations that are addressed in this way. In the context of the learning project, the way these three pillars played out, engage, investigate, and act, were through the Learn Inc. sandbox, then the so-called incubator, project-based teaching incubator, and finally the learning courses that were developed, that were translated and transformed into video lectures, and the open digital archive that will be produced.
Talking about challenges and changes in the educational approach, one would ask, what is the context that inspired such a significant shift in the methodology of teaching and learning?
We've already mentioned that in the beginning. I mean, these are the encompassing, wide-reaching, deep transformations and transitions in society. And those digital advancements, they do require higher education institutions to change their own institutional practices, but also to be able to prepare students for the fast-changing context in which the universities are situated. I guess we can just briefly summarize the situation, current situation in society by saying that students are not the same. Because the world is not the same, therefore education cannot be the same. And we can draw upon philosophers such as John Dewey, who says that education is not preparation for life, but education is life itself. Linked to this is the concept of the learning society, which implies also a sense of urgency. Again, because universities are not developing in a vacuum. They need to adapt themselves to the complex and fast-paced changing society and enable lifelong learning, as we said in the beginning, because challenge-based learning is not something that's applicable and only relevant to formal educational establishments. But why is education not the same? Well, for the simple reason that, again, in a society where multiple changes are going on, you need to find tools and ways to address those changes. And because of their complex character, you need multiple actors to work on it. You need to draw from different sources and resources of knowledge, not just from one single subject area. And so education necessarily needs to become a more dynamic process. So the old-fashioned, put it this way, traditional classroom method of teaching, where one person simply transmits knowledge and requires the students to just memorize and apply the memorized knowledge to a certain subject, is no longer the case. The teacher, and we've seen this in learning, becomes more like a mentor, more like a partner in the co-creation, generation of knowledge, in the sharing and dissemination of knowledge. So we're moving from just memorizing to generating knowledge to solve a problem, solve an issue. The benefits of challenge-based learning in this case are the fact that it requires collaboration, it stimulates creation, it stimulates critical thinking, it stimulates reflection, it stimulates students to become indeed agents of change, because they are the ones that have identified the issue, they have found the solution, and they are the ones that can also communicate the results of their work to the community, to their peers. So there's an increased sense of ownership of knowledge. So you're not an external, just a passive receiver, you're part of it. And bottom line is, all of that means sort of increased added value, social added value to education.
Your lecture was planned and prepared, designed to aid consortium partners, the partner universities, and also any other higher education institution that is willing to engage in project-based learning, to prepare their materials, to challenge them, to provoke them, to give them the context of this new methodology. So, as a member of the project team, can you tell us more about your activities in relation to PBL?
Do you mean the activities of the Learn Inc. project?
Yes,
the Learning Incubator, the partners
that were tested within the frame of our project Learn Inc.
It was from I guess from conceptualization and writing the proposal. What is it? More than 3 years ago. The partners from Turkey, Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania, they had the shared understanding that in the changing times in which we live today, the universities necessarily need to change, and that change involves a different way of engaging students and a different way of engaging with the community. And so when we were developing the project and work and defining its milestones and critical and main activities, we sort of followed that same process that is implied in the engage, investigate, act diagram or framework of challenge-based learning, and the process that we defined it, or the way it was defined in learning, was that students were asked to discover an issue, to define it, to develop it, to deliver it, and to leverage the results of that of what they have produced. So there were the core elements and activities of the project included a virtual open content sandbox, and each partner university had the opportunity to engage students at graduate level, master, and then PhD students to identify challenges, to formulate them as research questions, and then subsequently those most promising, most viable proposals were selected for small grants, so that they could be developed through the teaching incubator into graduate level courses, online courses, and these courses afterwards were transformed and are currently being transformed into an open digital archive. So in the following diagram, you can see how we proceeded and how based on the experience of the partners and what other universities that are interested in challenge-based learning can maybe draw upon to develop their own projects. So we started with informing students what is challenge-based learning, taking steps to engage them in identifying challenges, encouraging them to go to their communities and work with communities to identify those problems, define the research scope. Then in the incubator, they had time to work together with faculty and teachers to develop their courses. And subsequently, those courses were transformed into video-based lectures and will be delivered in the respective university as part of the university curricula. I think that this dynamic of constantly engaging and challenging the students themselves, but also faculty, was quite significant, and indeed generated a different understanding of what education is, a different attitude, different concept of the roles of students and teachers in academia in this case.
You come from a non-governmental organization and your professional background is primarily in this sector. RTP Foundation is part of the consortium, so from this perspective, from the point of view of the NGO, can you tell us more about the role of the third-party organizations in this interaction between educational organization and learner? Here the questions might be, do such third-party organizations have their role in the creation and dissemination of knowledge, first, and second, how does their participation affect the quality of the educational process?
Most definitely. I mean, the answer to the question, do that civil society or communities have a role in defining or co-defining the mission of a university or the vision of universities and education? Yes, they do. And again, the fact is, for the simple reason that indeed universities do not exist in a vacuum. And the people who are educated and taught in university, subsequently, they're always embedded in the community, but then they go back with their knowledge and skills that they have acquired during education back to work with the community on various other projects. Absolutely necessary. Again, going back to the engage, investigate, and act framework of challenge-based learning, this is a collaborative process. It is a collaborative process because challenges are challenges that citizens experience and face every day in their life, in their real lives. Local actors, civil society organizations, community organizations, public institutions, they do have a very intricate knowledge of the local dynamics, of the history of the place, of the specific relations in that particular community. So in order for a challenge to be solved, that knowledge has to come that the community has, that may not be available to university and to academia. That knowledge has to be disseminated to them, given to them, so that academia and researchers and students can adequately understand it and adequately address it. This two-way of communication from community to university and vice versa, on the one hand, supports and makes possible the involvement of community, of citizens who may have specific expertise to generate knowledge, to find solutions, but it also increases the trust in research and science. We have seen, especially in the COVID pandemic, a great decline in trusting science and research. So this needs to be remedied, this needs to be changed. So when you have the community participate from the get-go in the definition of the problem and then the pathways to find a solution and then implement that solution, you create trust in the community, which means that both community and academia are jointly responsible for what is going to happen and how the solution to a problem or challenge is going to be implemented. That means legitimacy to the academic knowledge, higher legitimacy, shared responsibility. That means inclusiveness. That means public consent. Because as we said in the beginning, those grand societal challenges that we're talking about, those deep transitions require broad public consent so that those people who are at risk of being excluded for whatever reason, economic, social, cultural, from those deep transitions, we need to find ways for them to be included. So we need to find ways for them to have their voice in the process. It may sound more like a cliche, but this is indeed a way to democratize research and education in a meaningful way. I mean, there's various other ways to explain at which stages and how local communities, society, civil society organizations, how they can work with universities. But I guess we don't have enough time for this today. Just to mention that challenge-based learning fits very well within another framework developed by the European Commission, which is responsible research and innovation. It was developed about 15 years ago to ensure that research meets public needs, that the outcomes of research are beneficial to the end users, and to help researchers and universities follow certain guidelines and follow certain requirements that ensure that research is public, has social high social added value. There's 5 keys of this responsible research and innovation framework, and these are citizen or stakeholder engagement, research ethics, gender equality, science education, and open science. And you see very well that all of these are part of a challenge-based learning, and all of these have been implemented in the learning project.
You gave us a thorough coverage of the theoretical aspects of the challenge-based learning and education, discussing how it gives real-life puzzles to be solved at the classroom and scaling projects to the level of this very classroom. In this light, it would be very useful for our listeners, for our viewers, to cross the border of theory and show PBL in action in cases and practices. Can you give us some examples of how PBL works in real life?
Well, a prime example of this are the projects of Sofia University, which is the academic partner in the project, and the competitions, the courses that were developed by the students, and that viewers can see and listen to on the project's YouTube channel. But I could probably, drawing back on experiences from the third sector in which I work, I can share some meaningful initiatives that are implemented, for example, by Sofia municipality, because we are in Sofia. So one of them, for example, is I think the Sofia Science Festival, which gives a forum for young researchers to showcase their research, their studies, and to explain in an understandable way how they address such grand challenges. An initiative that has been developed and promoted by Sofia municipality is a so-called Academy for Visionaries. What that is that for the past 3 years, the municipality has been financially supporting small-scale projects through small grants to young people from 15 to 29 years of age. Exactly in this way. So those young people, they identify a problem, they apply for a grant, then they work with a mentor from the civil society sector, sometimes also with people from the municipality, to implement that their project in the community. We have also seen, and I think this is characteristic not just for the administration of Sofia municipality, but also across public institutions everywhere, is that not just civil society organizations, but also public institutions realize more and more that those challenges that we're dealing with cannot be solved in a simply administrative, bureaucratic way. So the municipality itself kind of changes its role and becomes a challenge owner. What does that mean? Well, there have been multiple, in the past maybe 5 or 10 years, multiple initiatives in which the municipality has given a challenge, be it for digitalization of the city, be it for smart mobility, be it for clean air, has gathered students and young professionals in hackathons, in datathons, and the solutions that have been developed by those initiatives have been implemented. I mean, of course, we're not talking specifically about an academic environment, but this is how academia provides solutions, public institutions provide financial support, and subsequently implement it for the benefit of society. There's several, more initiatives that I can mention, but again, I guess in this case we really see the potential for taking up solutions developed through challenge-based research and learning being implemented and practically benefiting the community in urban planning initiatives.
You and your team from RTP did a great job in covering and explaining the nature of project-based learning and the different approaches related to it for the consortium members, but also for any other organization, educational institution that is willing to undertake such an effort and develop project-based learning courses and problem-oriented learning courses. I have a suggestion for you, since we have quite an extensive scenario. Let's turn it into a training material and add it in a PDF form to this video lecture. And here at the end, I think for our listeners, it will be very useful to read through the list of references and expand their knowledge if they're willing to.
Absolutely, no problem. I was glad to share some of the questions or some ideas that relate to challenge-based learning. Of course, there's much more that can be read, and much more also from the work of the Learn Inc. Project that could be shared and could be used by other interested institutions, universities, civil society. So thank you very much, and I will be glad to contribute further to the knowledge base of the project.
Thank you, Snežina.